Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Apparatus claim. We had already mentioned that the classes of claims could be apparatus, it could be method, it could be a composition, it could be a system claim. There are different classes, but broadly in India we have two classes, what we call a product or a process. If you look at the language of section 21J, an invention is defined as a new product or a process. Or if you look at the language of section 48, which tells us what are the rights that a patentee has. There are two broad sets of rights a patentee has. One right is with regard to a product patent, and the other right persists in a process patent. A patent over a product or a patent over a process. Now, apparatus claim is the thing that belongs to the first category, what we call product claims. Now let's look at apparatus claims in detail. The general use of apparatus claim. An apparatus denotes, it covers a wide variety of things. It includes machines, it includes devices, instruments, appliances and gadgets. It includes electrical circuits, computer related inventions, hydraulic devices, mechanical and electrical devices. A whole lot of things can come under an apparatus claim. You could call the mission a mission for doing certain thing, a device, an instrument, but the bigger genus is the apparatus. So the apparatus could include any of these different categories of inventions. Now, a ceiling fan can be described in this language. Apparatus for circulating air, which comprises motor, a means for suspending the said motor from a ceiling, a motor housing, a switch for controlling operation, and a plurality of blades. Now, this is a claim for a ceiling fan. Now, you will notice here that what is being recited, you can identify from here the preamble, the transition. The preamble is here, an apparatus for circulating air. A transition comprises, and from here on you will find the body. That's the preamble, the transition, and the body. Apparatus for, whenever you refer to apparatus for, it describes the function of the apparatus. An apparatus for heating, an apparatus for boiling. So you can bring in a function by introducing the function along with the apparatus. But over a period of time, if there are large number of patents filed for that particular apparatus may take a more specific name. So in which case it is better to refer to that specific name. Rather than referring to an apparatus for circulating air, you could say a ceiling fan comprising. So whenever a particular apparatus or a gadget or a machine gets a specific name, it's better to use the shorter preamble. Find the main elements to be claimed. This is what you would do in making an apparatus claim, and make each element the subject of one clause. We had seen that every element is recited in a separate clause. We had seen that in the case of the foldable iPhone. We had seen that in this example too, the ceiling fan example. It has to be a separate clause. You have to find the main elements to be claimed. In an apparatus claim, you will find the main element to be claimed. Then you will make each element the subject of one clause. We had seen it in the context of the foldable iPhone. Each element, the housing, the structure, the display, were shown as different clauses. You can write them together, but you should understand that each element is shown as a separate clause. Name the elements and show the cooperation. You will name the elements, housing, give it a name, structure, foldable structure, the display. You'll have to name it with an appropriate name and show how they cooperate. Now, you could have some negative limitations in an apparatus claim, but they are allowed only in few cases where they are justified. You could call non-magnetic, because that's a negative limitation, or non-identical, colorless. There have been instances where such words have been used. And because you are claiming an apparatus, which is a mechanical device, you should support your claim with drawings. Now, in a mechanical invention for an apparatus, you would use clear names for each element. Many a times there will be similar elements grouped together, so you have to qualify and use the right name for each element. If you want a broader scope for your invention, then you would use functional names. Rather than calling a particular device which is used for heating, you would use means for heating, which can incorporate multiple different types of heating devices. Now, in interpreting the claim, what we call claim interpretation, there can be intrinsic, extrinsic, or tertiary tools that you use when it comes to an apparatus claim. The intrinsic or internal tools that you will use are the claims and the specification itself. So if there is some doubt or ambiguity with regard to a claim, and when the claim needs to be interpreted, the first thing that you will rely on are the intrinsic tools. The claims, what do the claims say about that word, or what does the specification say about that word? You can also get into something what we call the prosecution history. What was the idea or what was the intent of the applicant during the course of prosecution history? What did the applicant submit, or what did the applicant do while the patent was being prosecuted in the patent office? So all these are what we call intrinsic tools. So there is doubt, ambiguity with regard to a word or a passage, you first use the intrinsic tools. Then if the ambiguity persists or if the doubt continues, then you go for the extrinsic tools like a dictionary or a thesaurus or an encyclopedia, whatever is required to further explain those terms. The last thing which you would use to explain a term or a phrase in a patent or to claim or to interpret the claim will be the tertiary tool, which is expert evidence. Normally happens in proceedings before the court. Meaning of elements. You have to show the preferred embodiment in the specification, and that has to be claimed. The abstract is a part of the specification, so it has to be defined. And you have to state the minimum number of similar elements when more than one is required. In terms of number of things, you have to show the minimum number if there is a possibility to use more than one. So if you are using a heater, you can say at least one heater or at least a heater. So which says that the minimum of one, could be more. And when you're using more than one, you use the word plurality. And you will see this word appearing in various claims that you read, a plurality of fans or a plurality of blades. So this is something which is particular for patent drafting. The language, rather than using many, we use plurality. And the reference to the drawing has to be made in the claims using parentheses. We have already covered this. This is a requirement in the law. Antecedents. Now, the element in the first claim, if it mentions for the first time ceiling fan, you would refer to it as a ceiling fan or a ceiling fan. The subsequent references, you can call it the ceiling fan, the said ceiling fan, or even such ceiling fan. So we have already mentioned this. the claims should have antecedent basis. If you mention something for the first time, you will refer to it using the indefinite article a, and if you mention it subsequently, you are going to use the definite article the or said or such. Now, a claim must be consistent with the specification. Now, this is what antecedent or antecedent basis means. A claim must be consistent with the specification and with itself. Elements recited in the claim must find antecedent basis in the description and within the claim, if earlier recited. So, the elements should find some basis in the description, which is a requirement what we refer to as fair basis. So what is mentioned, if you mention a rotor or a blade in the claim, you should have mentioned it in the specification. And even within the claim. Within the claim is every second reference to a ceiling fan should mention it as the ceiling fan, because it has already been mentioned before. Now, you try to avoid alternate expressions to avoid confusion. You cannot be using the ceiling fan in one place and an apparatus for circulating air. That's not permissible unless there are specific reasons for broadening the scope. Describe elements in logical order. Because it is an apparatus, you need to describe the logical order or the structure or the operational details. If it was an assembly of things, then you can just list out how it is assembled. But because these are different parts which cooperate and work with each other, you have to describe the elements in a logical order.